How you doing, everybody? John Arezzi here for Pro Wrestling Spotlight Live. It is February 13, 2021. Happy Valentine's, pre-Valentine's weekend for everybody. Also President's Day on Monday. I'm happy to have everybody join us today. I do want to have a quick explanation on what happened last week. In the middle of our stream, we were playing a match that we got cut off of Facebook on our live stream for some copyright infringement for playing the Morales-Koloff match. But we will not show any clips today that are infringing on anybody. I'll tell you that right now. We have a really cool show for everybody today. My dear friend, Donny Laible, is reconnected with David Sammartino recently, and Don wrote a fabulous article for slamwrestling.net, and I said, well, maybe you could bring David on with us, and he reached out to David, and I see David joining in the waiting room right now. So David agreed, so we're going to have David Sammartino on with us today, which should be a lot of fun. It's been a long time since I talked to him, maybe 30 years. Also, later in the broadcast, we may go longer today. I just want to let everybody know that. So there's no time restrictions here. So we definitely will go over the 1 hour mark. So we have an author coming on, Vinny Berry, who wrote this book, Lance by Chance, Wrestling as a Von Erich, and Jamie Hemmings from Slam Wrestling will also be joining us. She wrote a great review on slamwrestling.net. So we have a pretty stacked show for everybody today. But as always, what we do each and every week, we bring Alex Robertson from slamwrestling.net. It's a Slam Wrestling show here today, and she gives us the news each and every week. So let's bring Alex on right now from Canada. Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Crazy day, crazy week, crazy year. Just trying to hang in there. Got a haircut.
Yes, you look great.
Oh, thank you. Had to get it. It was 2 months since the last one, and I had to also, make sure that I matched your Macho Man shirt this week.
Of course,
so there you go. But I am not wearing one underneath. No.
No,
I am not.
I was making fun of John before because we both have purple shirts hanging up, and I think that secretly he's wearing one underneath and he just doesn't want to tell us.
Yeah, well, maybe someday I'll make the reveal to see what the shirt is underneath, but certainly won't be today.
Right.
But everything okay up there where you are in your neck of the woods?
Yeah. I mean, status quo, same type of situation as last week. Our cases are going down. Some restrictions have been lifted. We're allowed to go into stores now. Our hair salons, spas have slowly started to reopen. So that's a good sign. I'm hoping it stays that way. But as soon as we can get this vaccine into Canada, all will be good, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that day too. I'm hoping everything's going to get better. And we have horrible weather coming into Nashville this weekend too. So I'm like just stuck in the house, and I usually go out every day, and now I can't even do that because of the weather. But hopefully this pandemic will start with the vaccines kicking in, and cases are down, hospitalizations are down. So maybe things will get better. Matter of fact, I'll talk to Don a little bit about Mets and spring training, because they announced that there will be some fans allowed in this March, and I'm excited about that. But anyway, this is a wrestling show, and we'll talk about the news of the week and what's going on in the business. So let us know what's happening.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to mention, and we did post a story about this on Slam Wrestling this week, but beloved wrestler and trainer Rusty Brooks passed away.
Yes.
Now, if some people don't know who he is, I think he was most notable for actually losing to a lot of WWF Hall of Famers. I know one of them was Hulk Hogan. Yeah. And he did train a handful of people out of Florida, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a bunch of his former trainees who had some very nice things to say about him. He passed away at the age of 63. But he did have health issues over the last few years. But if you want to read the full story, it's on slamwrestling.net on our homepage.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on, and Slam Wrestling covers it all, and that was a sad story from this week.
Definitely. But this weekend, we actually have a very busy weekend in terms of wrestling. Tonight, Impact has its No Surrender pay-per-view that's on Impact Plus. So it's a pretty lengthy pay-per-view, I would say. There's about 9 matches on the card, and they have been building up to it for the last couple of weeks. Lately, anyway, one of the matches that they seem to be promoting the most is Ace Austin with Madman Fulton, Blake Christian, Chris Bay, Josh Alexander, Suicide, Trey Miguel, and Willie Mack. So it's a big triple threat match, and it's to determine Impact's the X Division Championship, the #1 contender. So that's one of the big matches that they were promoting this week. Another one that they also have been hyping up a lot is Jordan Grace and Jazz and ODB, who made her return about 2 weeks ago now, versus Gianna Perazzo, Kimberly, and Susan. So it's a 6 knockout tag team match. So that should be interesting. We've got some fresh faces. We've got some old, I would call them legends that are going to be all in the ring together. So, I mean, it's definitely one to watch. Like I said, it's a lengthy pay-per-view. There are 9 matches on the card, but it's definitely one to watch. I know that I've been watching a little bit of Impact Plus's pay-per-views, and they have been very good. And I mean, we're all kind of at home anyway. We're not really going out anywhere. So if you're looking to watch wrestling, definitely should take a look.
Absolutely. So that should be a good show.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, tomorrow we have another pay-per-view, a Valentine's Day pay-per-view, if you will, from NXT. They will be having their NXT takeover called Vengeance Day. Now, there aren't that many matches on the card, which is kind of surprising because normally when we have NXT pay-per-views, there's usually more than a couple, and there's only really a handful of matches that I'm seeing right now. And I mean, I've been watching NXT. They've been trying to hype it up as best they can. Their ratings haven't been that great lately, so I don't really know what to expect coming out of this pay-per-view. Although in the last couple of years, I've noticed that NXT tends to put on better pay-per-views than the WWE SmackDown and Raw does.
Yeah, but their ratings have eroded really pretty steadily over the last several months.
Yeah, and like I said last weekend, I know that they tried to up that a little bit with Edge coming on to the program after his big win at the Royal Rumble, but it didn't really seem to budge the numbers at all. No. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of numbers come out of this pay-per-view. There's 5 matches. We have Io Shirai versus Toni Storm and versus Mercedes Martinez for a triple threat match for the NXT Women's Championship. And then we have a second women's match, Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez, Ember Moon, and Shotzi Blackheart. And this is part of the Dusty Rhodes tag team tournament. So that's definitely, it's been fun to watch those. So I know I've been definitely following it. And then we have another Dusty Rhodes tag team classic match. So we have Nash Carter and Wesley versus Grizzly Young Veterans, which is James Drake and Zach Gibson. So I would say those are the top 3 ones to kind of watch so far. Again, I'm not really sure what we can expect out of it, but I mean, we'll see. I'm hoping it's gonna bump their ratings a little bit because they definitely need it.
Right. And some interesting stuff going on with WWE Elimination Chamber pay-per-view coming up.
Yes, we saw yesterday SmackDown did announce theirs. And I was kind of surprised to see, I know that Seth Rollins made his return back to the ring, back to SmackDown. And he said that, now that he is a father, he's seeing a whole new light of the ring. But I mean, he's not really in a storyline right now.
That's ho-hum for me. That's very, very boring. He came in, they had all the performers around the ring, like he's given this big speech, and then they all walk away from him. And I mean, the guy's such an incredible wrestler, and he's done such incredible things in the business. And for them to put him in this position, I mean, it really it's really taken a lot of the luster off everything he's done. I mean, it's just a horrible way to portray him.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in the last few months when he was the Monday Night Messiah, when he was on Raw, I didn't enjoy that kind of character either. So it's going to be. I'm hoping that they're going to push him a little bit. I'm hoping that he is going to be involved in Elimination Chamber somehow, because I think it could really help that brand. Especially, I know for me, it's really hard to get through SmackDown, and it's only 2 hours.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Raw, SmackDown is 3. It's just, and then seeing Kevin Owens come down again yesterday, I thought that was done, but apparently it's not. So he'll be in the Elimination Chamber as well, and
Roman Reigns doesn't have to defend his title at Elimination Chamber.
No.
Drew McIntyre does, because Paul Heyman found a loophole. Surprise, surprise.
Leave it to Paul.
Of course. But I mean, I think I'm done with watching Roman Reigns every other spear, Superman punch. So I'm looking to see something different. So I'm kind of happy that he's not going to be involved. But I mean, Elimination Chamber is always a touch and go one for me. So I'll wait and see how they choose to build this one.
Right. And they're still waiting to see who Edge is going to, decide who he's going to go up against at WrestleMania. So, but I mean, it's just kind of like it's going through the motions. I try my best to watch all of the shows. I'm just getting too old. I just watch old tapes.
Man, I don't blame you, because I've been doing the same thing. I try and watch the product today, and it's very difficult when I look at what we had back in the day, even before I was born. So it's just so much more entertaining. So
you missed out.
I know. God, why did my parents have me in the 90s? But you know what? It's interesting because it gives me a bit of perspective. And even if you look at the last couple of years before, when Becky Lynch was still on the roster, and she was Becky 2 belts at one time, like that was something to watch. And now this week, you look at the women's roster now, and it's not like they're faltering by any means, but they have some weird things that keep happening. Like Nia Jax this week trending on Twitter.
I saw that. That was crazy.
Yeah, because she fell off of the apron of the ring and yelled "my hole." So
Well, first she said "my butt," right? First she said "oh, my butt," and then she said "my hole."
Yeah, and then of course, here come the tweets and the constant loops, and even Mick Foley chimed in saying that it now should be a shirt on the WWE.com. Like it's getting kind of too gimmicky for me.
And it's such a far cry from where they were just a couple of years ago with Ronda Rousey and Becky and Charlotte. That incredible build up to WrestleMania. It's just not the same. And now with Flair, against his daughter, I mean, it's just kind of silly.
Yeah, I mean, especially for somebody like Flair, who's a Hall of Famer, who's paved the way, and now he's doing this kind of weird gimmick. I don't know. I don't understand it either.
I don't know. We just have to keep watching the old stuff and having shows like this to we reminisce and bring back some of the legends. So, I mean, that's where we can get our enjoyment from. I mean, we're a small group of hardcore fans on here that love to reminisce, and we love talking about some of the new stuff. We're just hoping for better days with the current product, but hey, listen, the business is the business, and who knows what's going to happen. Something could, resurge it, and we need some new stars to really be elevated, but we'll see. We'll keep covering it, and we'll hope for the best.
That's right. We can only hope for the best.
What else can we do,
That's right.
Well, anything else happening before we wrap it up with you?
The one thing I do want to mention that I thought was kind of interesting this week, Impact announced that they're going to be having a new weekly TV show before their actual Impact episodes, and it's going to be called Before Impact. Obviously being stated. So, I mean, it's 1 more hour of action. So we'll see what it's going to be. It's going to start at 7 p.m. It's going to be on Access TV. So we'll look forward to that this Tuesday.
Well, check it out. Alex, as always, it's a pleasure having you here on behalf of slamwrestling.net. And I advise everybody to go to that site because Greg Oliver and his team, I mean, the news is up there quick as soon as it happens, and there's book reviews and pay-per-view reviews and columns, and so we're we love slamwrestling.net with Greg and the whole team, and of course Greg is and I we have the book coming out April the 6th. Matt Memories is coming out, my autobiography written by Greg and myself, and I am excited about that. And Greg is was a perfect person to do this book with me. So that's coming up soon. We'll be talking about that soon. And you have a great week, and we'll speak to you soon.
All right. Have a great week, John.
All righty. Take care. Alex Robertson, slamwrestling.net. The book's coming out in a couple, 2 months. I mean, less than 2 months now. And advanced copies have been sent to reviewers. I'm starting to read some of the reviews from some people, and so far, so good. People think my life has been a little nutty, because it has. Before I do anything else, I want to tell you about how this next segment started. Everybody knows that Donny Laible and I go back to the 70s, and we have always remained close friends over those years, even though there have been years that we even haven't talked. But Donnie's back in my life in a big way, and I was happy to make that introduction to Slam Wrestling, and now he's writing some incredible stuff for Slam Wrestling. And this past week, spoke to Don, and about a week and a half ago, actually, and he wanted to get a hold of David Sammartino, and Don did his due diligence and found David, and they have been close friends for many, many years. So I'm going to bring Don on. Don, how you doing, my friend?
Very good. Just let me give a shameless plug for your book, because I'm halfway through that. It's a very quick read, and the names just come so quickly back to me.
Type. We got a lot of big type in it, right? So it's a quick read. You can read it in 5 minutes.
I mean, when we have Professor Elliott, I mean, come on, I want to slow down. All the names that come back from the 70s and the 80s in there. It's just a great ride down memory lane. So people are going to love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it, and I was happy to get that advance over to you. I mean, they're being printed right now, and there are advanced copies out there. So, obviously, when it comes to the wrestling part, not necessarily the country music part, although you did know me, and there were times where you were backstage with Patty Loveless and I, right, taking some pictures.
I was on her bed in her traveling bus. Yeah. We went to a concert together in Long Island.
Yeah,
and I said, I got to get on the bed.
I think that was the first time I'd seen her in 10 years.
Yeah,
at that point, that was I can't even remember. Was it 1990 around there? But this was really fascinating for me when you were able to, you said you had an idea, you want to get a hold of David, and you did, and it was so cool. And I mean, you guys go back a long way, so it must have been very exciting for you to reach out and get a hold of David after so many years, and he's there waiting for us. And before we bring him on, I just want to get kind of the backstory on how this happened.
Well, I always appreciated him. I thought he was, he was the kind of wrestler. He was when I got into wrestling in 1972. What got me interested in it was he worked in the ring. He had boots and trunks, and he worked, and that's what the business was about.
Yeah.
And of course, when you have a parent that's in the same profession, that's well known, it's clearly not easy to do. And I thought he handled himself quite well. I remember him in Georgia Championship Wrestling. Then, of course, when he was in the Northeast, he worked for Walter Kowalski a number of times. And the first time I met David was in Gardner, Massachusetts. It was in June or July. So it was during the summer of '86. And I just thought, he wasn't a guy that was full of himself. He wasn't a guy that walked around, expecting this, that, and the other thing. He was just a guy that worked and didn't take, himself all that serious. And I had a lot of respect for him. And over the years, the preceding years after that, I got to know him. And,
and very believable in the ring.
A man of conviction.
Yes. Very like he had the passion, the fire. I mean, and I think one of the saddest things, at least in my book anyway, is the fact that he didn't have one of the major championships strapped around his waist, because he certainly deserved it back in the day. But let's bring him on. Let's have this reunion. And I haven't seen David in a long time. David is here, and there he is. David, how you doing?
Well, hey guys, how are you? It's a pleasure to be on your show. I have to tell you, I haven't seen Don in about 30 years. I'm kind of scared looking at him. He looks like one of these high-profile attorneys that I've been seeing on TV lately.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he?
I went for the Luthez look today. The tie, the shirt, and the jacket everywhere. You know.
You both look great.
Well, the last time I saw you, I think it was in 1990 when you were doing some work with the UWF.
Yeah, you were telling me the other day. Yeah, I couldn't remember. The older I get, my brain's getting foggier. But yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, and you had several appearances back when I first launched Pro Wrestling Spotlight on commercial radio in 1989. At that time, you were doing work up in the Northeast. You were doing some shows for Tommy D, if you remember him, up in Staten Island.
I was doing the independent circuit, quite a bit back then.
Yeah, and at the time, I mean, I had this wild idea with another wrestler. We wanted to start our own Long Island Northeast federation, and we called it ECW, not ECW. This was before ECW was ECW, so we were calling it Eastern Championship Wrestling. And we had a couple of discussions with you because we wanted to make you the champion and hook you up with Captain Lou at the time. But that didn't happen. It was hard to get something off the ground, and the wrestling business is the wrestling business. So, I think this is really cool to get you on here, David. I mean, it's been, and you're located in Georgia, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I live on the outskirts of Atlanta, called Dallas, Georgia. It's a suburb of Atlanta.
Do you ever run into Patty Loveless in Dallas, Georgia? Do you know who she is?
No, I don't. No.
She's a legend in country music, and she lives in that town.
Oh, is that right? No.
I managed her years and years ago. And how big of a town is Dallas?
Boy, I wouldn't even know how to. It's a small town, you know. But because of the COVID thing, we're not that much,
Yeah, but Patty's been there for many, many years. She's married to a guy named Emery Gordy Jr.
My wife would probably have known that, but it's just me. I'm just a dummy. I don't know.
So what are you doing these days, David?
I'm a retired guy now. I'm an old retired guy, but I stay very active. Well, I tell people I'm retired, until the next opportunity. But I'm just enjoying my life. I'm an old guy. I work out 3 times a day. I have some property here, so I'm always doing chores. I'm always outside. So I'm very thankful. I'm very blessed.
Well, I'd certainly like to, go over some of your career, and of course, you come from a legacy that everybody knows, and I know I don't know if it's hard to talk about or not, but I would like to, just kind of throw some questions out, and you could answer what you like, and if you don't want to answer something, you just say, "John, get the hell out,"
Gee, hey, I'll tell you like it is.
I appreciate that. And Don, of course, I'm sure you have some things you want to talk to David about as well. But how long did you actively wrestle for, first and foremost?
I actually started in 79 and worked steady till I guess it was 93. And then from then on, it was just sporadically, whatever I could get. It was hard for me I couldn't even get booked. For a long amount of time. So I was just doing it very sporadically. Whatever independent would hire me, then I would go,
Yeah. And, obviously with your dad, Bruno Sammartino, was such a prominent figure and historic figure in professional wrestling. I'm sure growing up, with your brothers and out of Pittsburgh. I mean, was that something you wanted to do, as a kid? So you wanted to follow in your father's footsteps?
When I was a kid, my dad was the love of my life. All I did was want to be like him. And it was extremely difficult because at that time, my dad was on TV all the time and he was the world champion, which made it really hard for me in school. But I always I had this guy that I lived with and that I admired. Like, a lot of people, whether it was a movie star, whether it was a sports guy or whatever, I didn't have none of that because I had my dad. My dad was my idol. He was the love of my life. And back then, it's a funny thing. Back then, I always feared of losing him because I saw other friends of mine that lost their dads really early on. And I always I used to worry. See, back then, there was a lot of things going on. Okay, not because you had the Vietnam War and all that stuff, but planes were being hijacked to Cuba. And I always worried about him flying all the time because there was once in a while there was a plane crash or whatever. But I always worried about him traveling.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it was like the Cuban. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that? When planes were getting hijacked.
Absolutely. Yeah, I certainly do.
Yeah, they all went.
I used to worry about losing my dad that way. Like in a plane crash or whatever. And I always thought, God Almighty, what would I do without my dad?
Right. He was always on the road. He was everywhere. He was traveling around the world. I mean, he must have been. He probably didn't get home very much.
Yeah, back then he was. Yeah, it was like he'd be home. He'd be gone all week. He'd come home on a Sunday.
Were you happy? Were you happy when in '71 when he decided to take a little time off and get off the road? I mean, when he lost to Koloff and was like, was that a time for you guys?
Yeah, I guess I can't really remember. Like it was like. He was going through a lot of pain. He had like a really bad back then and all that. And so he was he needed oh well, of course I was glad he was on. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then he comes back in late '73 and gets a title from Stan Stasiak at the Garden, and then goes back at it again. Travels around everywhere, and then he breaks his neck in that match at Madison Square Garden. So that probably made all of you kind of like.
Yeah, I was when that happened. I was in prep school, 100 miles from my home in Pittsburgh, and my mom had called me and she says, "Boy, you're gonna have to come home because your dad broke his neck last night." And I didn't know. I says, he broke his neck. Is he gonna die? Because I thought when you break your neck, you die.
Or get paralyzed.
Yeah. He's in traction. He's at the such and such hospital and such doctors is working with him. So I came home and but yeah, I remember that. Like
I was there at the Garden when that happened, and pretty much remember.
Yeah.
I pretty much remember when he went down, and it looked like. Something didn't go right there, and that was amazing.
Yeah, Hansen slammed him down. He was blown up. He was tired, and he caught my dad off the ropes for a big scoop slam, and he slammed him right down on his head instead of slamming him on his back. So he went head first.
That footage exists, and of course he comes back into Shea Stadium and gets his revenge on Stan, but. I mean, to break your neck and with the condition he was in, maybe that's why he got better so quickly. I mean, because he was a great physical specimen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was. Back in those days, my dad was in such good shape, nobody could keep up with him,
Dave, I always, as a longtime wrestling fan, what I enjoyed was out of Pittsburgh that there was Larry Zbyszko, Johnny Valiant, Johnny DeFazio, Nikolai Volkov worked with your dad there. What was it like being around when you were a younger kid, being around these guys, and then getting to?
I was totally inspired. And I was, I looked up to all those guys you just mentioned. I looked up to all these guys because I wanted to be like because of my dad. I wanted to be a professional wrestler. That was I knew that's what I wanted to be. I knew that's what I wanted to do. That's why I lifted weights. That's why I went out for the wrestling team. That's why I did those things because I wanted to prepare to become that. Yeah.
And then you were on the road with these guys too. That was a little surreal that you knew them when you were a kid and then you're one of them.
Yeah, and even wrestling them, that was a huge deal. Boy, I'm really honored how you gave me that great introduction. people say, well, hey, you know, bum bum, what was it? I said, yeah, I always wish I could have been a world champion, but I got to do some other cool things that people maybe don't realize. And I got to wrestle all these guys that I grew up watching my dad wrestle.
Mm.
I mean, how many people could say that? You know,
including Larry Zbyszko.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, I got to wrestle Ray Stevens. I got to wrestle a lot of these guys, and Mike Koloff, Kowalski, all these guys that were legends in the business when my dad was in his heyday. And I was so honored and felt so privileged to be in the, you know, to sweat with these guys, you know.
Yeah. What was your go ahead, Don, and then I'll jump in.
I can tell you that being around Kowalski and Volkov often, there wasn't every two sentences where somehow Bruno came in. I mean, these guys were. I mean, your dad was the guy to them, and they had respect.
Yeah, well, those two guys you just mentioned, Kowalski and Volkov, you wouldn't find better human beings than them.
Sure.
Those human beings don't exist no more. They were great people, and they had a passion for what they did.
Yeah, they were class individuals and professional, and I had gotten to know Walter through Don, and what a great guy he was. And, of course, Koloff, oh, my goodness, I had shows that he was on for me, and what a polite guy, just a respectful man, and what an incredible talent he was in the ring.
Yeah. They were very honest, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it's in a business that sometimes, you know, good people are few and far between sometimes. I mean, it's a crazy business. But what for you, I mean, what was like the most memorable thing that you did in the ring, your favorite moment, your favorite match, your favorite person to work against? What do you remember most as far as that really puts a good feeling when you think about it?
Well, I actually have had a lot of them. I guess maybe, okay, if you're talking WWF, if you're going to.
Talking anybody, really, any place.
Okay, well, when I wrestled Ray Stevens in the Omni, okay, that was a big deal for me to do that, okay?
What a legend, yeah.
Yeah, because Ray Stevens back in the day was like, you know, he was it, you know, especially my dad's heyday. But I guess was working in the Garden against Ken Patera with my dad in my corner. That was probably one of the biggest. That was a big deal for me.
What about the first WrestleMania? Because you were part of that too.
Yeah, you know, I tell a lot of people, because they look at WrestleMania has become this huge phenomenon. Well, when WrestleMania 1 really wasn't that big a deal to me. It was a big show. There was no pay-per-view then. It was
right. They were in closed circuit. Yeah, no one knew it was going to get as big as it got.
I don't know what other guys would say that you would talk to, but to me, all it was a big loaded card. And you had Liberace with some dancing girls, and you had some Cyndi Lauper, and there was some added stuff to it. But to me, it was just like a big show. It wasn't, you know. Then year after year, it kept growing to become this huge Super Bowl of wrestling type.
Yeah.
But it was just a big show. I wasn't even nervous. I didn't feel it was just like a big show. I just hope it does good so we get a good payoff.
Yeah. How many years were you in the WWF? I know
it wasn't even years. It was like maybe I was there for like maybe 6 months. Then it was maybe then I quit, and then I got to come back for a couple more months, and then I went back again, and then I got fired. And then so maybe a total of 3 different times. Maybe it was a total of maybe 8 months. Maybe if that's too long, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
it got to the point where I was getting very discouraged because I saw there was no grooming process with me there. And when I was paying my dues, and I always thought, well, I'm going to come here and I'm going to flourish, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And I used to complain to my dad all the time, Wyndham, they're pushing Steamboat, they're boom, boom. These guys are getting angles and getting all these things. When they used to do anything with me, it was with my dad. But they wouldn't do it on TV, where, say, if they did an angle with you on TV, well, you could go to Los Angeles, you could go to Detroit, you could go to Texas, you could take it anywhere and really do well. They kept it old school with us. So in other words, saying if we wrestled Orton and Piper in Pittsburgh, we would do like old school. Okay, we would do something there and then come back to the next show in a Texas death match or a cage match. You did your angle in the house show. That's the only town that saw it. Nobody else saw it. So they did stuff like us in the Spectrum in Philadelphia or in the Garden in New York or like Boston even. So they just kept it old school. They never did anything with us on TV. And we would be like, so they would never do anything with me. Yeah. I would be in the house shows. They would put me in matches in the house shows with guys that I'd beat on TV. You see what I'm saying? That was with that was when I did the Ron Shaw thing in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
House. I had just been in on top there with a couple months.
There's a question that came in about that Ron Shaw match in November '85 in Philly.
Yeah. Now back then, now you're talking about a David Sammartino that was immature and that was very impatient too. Okay. I was, 23 years old. So I mean, it's, I'm being immature and I'm being impatient because I wanted to climb the ladder.
Well, I mean, you look at the pressure you had, not only from who your dad was, but you're trying to make it on your own as well. I mean, and develop your own style and
that word you just used, pressure. Like a lot of people think that. I never felt pressure because I felt confident that in those days, I felt confident. I could bench press 500 pounds. I felt that my work in the ring was pretty good for as long as I've been, I had been in the business, and I felt like I was going to get better. So I didn't feel pressure. I was thankful that, hey, I have this name, but I felt like I could back it up pretty good.
Yeah, there's a question from Jimmy Scullin. I mean, he is related to Arnie. Heard a story about Bruno setting a world bench press record in high school. Is that you, or was that you, David?
Oh, at one time, when I was 18 years old, I benched 405. At no drugs, no steroids, no nothing. At a body weight of 205.
Wow.
So back then, that was something to brag about back then. I loved Arnold Skolin. Arnold Skolin was a good guy. He was a good friend. I made a lot of trips with Arnold Skolin. He was a good man too,
Yeah. Yes. He was around for a lot of years and was at your dad's side at ringside, and then later on with Bobby Backlund. I mean, he was certainly a legend, and he worked into his 50s or 60s, or whatever. He had a couple of matches back in the. He looked really good at his age.
Yeah. When my dad started in the business, he used to work out a lot with Arnold.
A couple of names from the past, Gorilla Monsoon and Jay Strongbow were around when you're much younger. What are your thoughts about them? Memories?
I love them. Gorilla Monsoon?
Yeah.
I love Gorilla Monsoon. I love Gino. I know him as Gino. Mm-hmm. And he was a good man. He was a good man to me. He was a very good friend of my dad's. Him and my dad, they butted head a few times back in the old days, but they were basically very good friends. And Gino was very good to me. Very good to me. In fact, if he was alive today, I'd probably have a job with the WWE now because he was a good guy. Always looked out after me. Jay Strongbow was a good guy, but I don't really know of him. When I was there, when I was in the WWE, he was an agent.
Yes.
So I just took orders from him, and but he was nice. He was nice. He was a good guy.
I mean, he's one of the most popular wrestlers ever, Strongbow. I mean, he was beloved by the fans too. I mean,
oh yeah, he was great. Yeah, he was great.
And basically, I mean, your dad and yourself, I mean, it's hard to talk about even for me because I just revere your family. And your dad I did business with. He was a hero of mine growing up. And of course, do you think that, the tension that started to build with you and your dad really started in those days in the 80s? Or, that's a sad thing to talk about. You don't have to if you don't want to either. I mean, so.
No, it started, I would complain to him. Well, okay. First of all, most of the trouble that ever happened with me and my dad, to be honest about everything, came from my mother. Me and my mother had a horrid relationship. And I think a lot of that added to the fuel with my dad. Now, being immature and impatient, I would complain to my dad all the time about this and about that and boom, boom. He would tell me the old school way, just keep your mouth shut, do what they tell you, save your money. But that was never good enough for him, You know what your capabilities are, and you know what you want, and you want to do,
Yeah.
And anybody told my dad, no, just be satisfied, boom, take your money, don't worry, just do it. He would never have done that. Nobody would. Because
he fought with the promoters in the very beginning, and then he got banished to Canada. So he spoke his mind.
Professional wrestling is a selfish business. That's just the way it is. That's okay. Because if you don't look out for you, nobody else will. So if you have to go after stuff. Sometimes it costs you things. It cost me things. It costs you relationships. You burn bridges. In my case, I blew bridges up.
Yeah. Your dad, you're talking about your dad. I mean, when I started Pro Wrestling Spotlight in 1989, I'd called the WWF and I talked to them and I'm like, I'm starting this radio show, and they knew me as a photographer back in the day. And I did a couple matches as enhancement too, that I got my ass kicked. But they said, you're not going to have one of these shows that are inside the business or whatever. I was like, no, I want to really get a relationship started with you. And I remember that at that time, Georgianne Macropolis, I had asked her to get me Bruno's number because I wanted to bring Bruno on the radio show, not knowing that there was a lot of heat with him and McMahon at the time. And then I agreed to bring Bruno on in the second show. I mean, they cooperated with me in my first show. They gave me Jimmy Hart to do an interview with, and this was right off of WrestleMania in 1989. And then I do this interview with Bruno, and your dad just went off on them. And I called the office and I was like, yeah, I'm bringing Bruno on. What did he say? And they were like, you're not going to play that interview, are you? I was like, I think I got to. And then they stopped cooperating with me. But your dad was on my show many, many times, and he was always outspoken. And how intense that heat was with him and Vince. I mean, it was crazy, and how he hated what was going on in the business. And so when you're talking about being outspoken, you may have taken after him because you never really held it in yourself. You would speak your mind.
Yeah, I was always an emotional kind of person. Passionate, emotional, it gets mixed up, and then you throw it out there, and then sometimes you wish, gee, I wish I said it differently. But you're young, you're immature, you're impatient. I like those words, immature and impatient. That's what I was,
I think a lot of us are like that when we were young too, especially in the profession that you chose. I mean, that, you see people getting pushed. I mean, you have a legacy, you have a name, you're talented, and it just never really, they never gave you the push that maybe you warranted at the time.
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing. But I mean, sad to the fact that when Bruno had, his years of alienation from the WWF and finally the WWE. In 2013, he agrees to go into the Hall of Fame, which was a shock to a lot of people. I mean, were you talking to your dad at the time, or was that
the last he's been gone? This April will make 3 years he's been gone.
Yes.
The last time I saw him personally, the last time I talked to him personally, was the last taping that I ended up doing with the UWF, and they did it in New York. It was January of 1991.
Wow. Yeah. I'd set that show up for Herb, actually. I was involved in the promotion at that time, and that was the last time
you were there?
Absolutely.
You were there?
Yes.
Oh, well,
yes.
Okay. That was the last time I saw him or spoke to him, because after that, my dad actually got me canned from that organization.
From the UWF?
From the UWF. Because it was it got to be. My dad became almost like an enemy to me back in those days, because he felt uncomfortable. We weren't talking, because this was after WWF. So I'd get a job with whatever, and my dad would we would say hello and shake hands, and that would be it. If I'd see him, oh, hi, Dad, I would boom, shake hands, boom. And then he'd do his tapings, and he went his way, I went my way. It felt, I think he was uncomfortable with all that. So he told Herb Abrams, hey, it's either me or him. So I would get canned. Like, I can remember working, I don't know if you remember a guy named Bob Raskin.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I worked for him religiously. He kept me working independently. And then a lot of people wanted me and my dad there, so my dad could be in my corner. Okay, so my dad would say, "No, you either want me or him." So I was already booked, and Bob Raskin called me, and he said, "Hey, David, I'm sorry, but I got to take you off." And then he told me why, and he didn't need the money, I did. So that would like upset me. And so this was the thing. This is what like really put a kibosh to the whole thing. So then I started getting angry, and then and then it was over. It was
Yeah,
it was bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's families that have estrangement, and there's different reasons for things. I mean, but it's sad to hear, of course. But hey, listen, I mean, you're happily married, you got great kids, you're living a nice life, and and so it's hard for me.
Well, it's all because of my wife.
Yeah,
she takes care of me.
Does she?
If it was like this setup here, I'm doing with you now. You think I could get here? You think I could do this by myself? I wouldn't know what to do. It's her. She set me up, and boom. I'm so stupid. I can't do anything like with all this stuff. She takes care of me. She literally, here, David, here, follow me. If it wasn't for her, I'd be lost. I'd be like a little dog in the woods,
David, did you ever think when you got out of wrestling, did you have any type of withdrawal where at some point you missed it, or you needed to be on the road to take a long drive or take a plane ride to get that lifestyle out of you?
Well, I loved wrestling in the ring, old style. I love that. I miss it. Somebody should hire me now for just one last match. Even though I'm 61, I only weigh like probably about 152 pounds. But I could do it.
WrestleMania.
You'd like to get in there for one last job.
For one more, just
Donny,
one last one, just to show people, like I said, hey, if Frank Gotch or George Hackenschmidt were alive today, I'd give them a run for their money.
Yeah, I mean, Luthez, he competed it well into his
70s. Yeah, Don was telling me the other day he was in his 70s.
I hope that you get that opportunity once. If that's something that you think that you'd really like to do, is to get in there one more time. I mean, that would be kind of amazing for people to see.
Well, I train like hell all the time. I'm 61. I heard, like I tell people, my 3 best friends these days is heat, ice, and Advil.
There you go.
As long as I have these 3 things, but how much longer, hey, my dad, he worked out religiously till like he was 72, I think it was. And then all the problems started happening.
Yeah.
Mostly when guys start to reach their 70s, things start popping up. So if I don't do it soon,
yeah, it'll be the time. And I know that that you still have interest in meeting the fans, and once the conventions start running up again, that you would welcome that opportunity to get together and do some of these autograph sessions too.
Yeah, I'm always available for that.
Yeah.
I guess we just have to see how this whole thing plays out. It's scary. What different times now we live in.
Oh, I know. It's the whole world has changed, and I hope
you don't know how much of it is so political. I mean, it's scary.
It's it's like I really feel bad for the kids today. I feel bad for the kids growing up and the teens, and I mean, because me growing up, Don growing up, I'm 64. You guys are still in your 50s. I mean, but it's like
62.
Oh, you're 62, Don?
In May, I'll be 62.
And David, how old are you?
61. I'm 61.
We're all in our 60s. We're all in our 60s. There you go. I don't feel that bad now.
Hey, but you guys look better than I do. Jeez, what kind of pills do you take? You need to send me some.
I never got married.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but here, hanging out in this place, I mean, by myself, I mean, it's like crazy. I have family in Colorado. I got family up in New York that I try to get to see very often. But still, I mean, the world is so crazy right now. And I just remember, I don't want to sound too ancient, but we're in a different place. We're in a different world. And it's I would love to see some type of normalcy come back eventually.
Hey, let me ask you this. I got to ask you while you're here, because I don't know. Where is superstar Billy Graham?
Billy's in Arizona still. He's in really bad health. I mean, he's had a myriad of problems, and
I know all, but I just haven't heard anything.
Out there. He's got some infections in his legs now, and the last
you ever talked to him?
The last time I spoke to Billy was in the 90s, man. It's in the 90s.
If you ever end up talking to him, please tell him I said hello. He was so good to me. He was so good to me, especially when he was a great guy.
Mm-hmm. David, who some of the people, when you're in the dressing room or on the road, who are some of the more entertaining people that made you laugh? Lou Albano. I mean, I've seen.
I was telling my wife today. You know who was really good? The Rock's dad, Rocky Johnson, because they got some movie coming out on him now, and they showed Rocky Johnson. Rocky Johnson was so funny.
Yeah, the young Rock comes on next week, and it's about Rock growing up with his dad.
Yeah, me and my wife were watching TV, and that came on, and then I started talking about stories from the past. Want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
We're in Mid-Atlantic Championship. I was working for the Crockett's back then, and we're in the dressing room. And Rocky Johnson is sitting beside me, and we're putting our boots on and everything. And there's a door behind a closet door that's open. Ivan Koloff, he was there then. He used to wear a big black cape. This is like 1982. And he had a big black cape hanging on the door. Ray Stevens is in the territory too, and he's noted to be like a serious prankster, a really serious prankster. So Rocky Johnson, I used to make some trips with Rocky. He used to like to have me go along with him. He was very funny, good guy. So anyway, we're sitting here. All of a sudden, Ray Stevens jumps in the dressing room from this other dressing room. into a police stance with a gun and shoots the gun and blows a hole right between me and Rocky Johnson. It went right between us.
That's
Took
crazy.
Koloff's coat. And then he started laughing like hell, that was the funny.
Crazy.
And I dove on the floor, and Rocky Johnson dove on the floor, and our hearts were.
Oh, who wouldn't feel that way?
That is the truth.
Wow. I mean, I tell you, we have another guest that's going to be coming on. We have an author and of a book about the Von Erichs, and I could talk to you for hours, David. I mean, and Don, can we do this again? Would that be okay?
Oh, I would love to. I'm honored that you had me.
No, it's an honor to talk to you, man. And I loved your father, and I know your situation with your dad was tenuous, but I mean, I respected him as a performer, and I always respected you, and I always revered you in a way because I always felt like you didn't get your just. You really should have been a champion in one of the big federations. I really felt that way because I really enjoyed when you did it, and you were very believable and very passionate. In the ring.
Thank you.
And
those are some of the best compliments I ever got in my life. Thank you.
You know what's another good compliment?
Thank you so much.
You're married 30 plus years. You're a dad. You're a grandfather.
Yep.
And you're smiling.
It's all because of my wife. She carried me. I had nothing to do with it. She carried me.
Well, I'm going to bring you back on, David. I'd love to bring you back on, and maybe there's a book about you that you should kind of think about because you got some story, you got some life story, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
And Don, I love you, my friend. You can hang out in the waiting room and watch the rest of the show, but I'm going to bring on Jamie and Vinny right now, and I thank you so much for your time, David.
But Don was always a great friend. Thanks for being a good friend, Don.
You guys were tight. And that article right now is on slamwrestling.net, and I just loved it, Don. I really enjoyed it, and it's called Rekindling a 30-Year-Old Friendship with David Sammartino, slamwrestling.net. Check it out, and this has been such a great reunion. I really appreciate it, guys.
My pleasure. I had a good time.
Same here. All right, we'll talk to you both soon. Thank you very much. There's David, Don, thank you. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Wow, that was fun. And I hate that, I knew that the show was going to go longer than an hour, and we're good with that. So without further ado, we have our next guest coming in. A really hot book in the wrestling book circuit right now is Lance by Chance, Wrestling as a Von Erich. Written by Lance Vaughn, and our next guest, Vinny Berry, coming in, also with Jamie Hemmings from Slam Wrestling. Jamie,
hi, John.
Vinny, how you doing, both of you?
I'm good.
I'm doing well, thank you.
Very good. I tell you, I mean, when I first heard about this book, and Vince, you reached out to me as well, and this was before it was even published, I think.
Yeah, I think it was.
And it came together pretty quickly.
No.
I mean,
the last year. Yeah, it's about 3, a little over 3 actually. But the last year, because of COVID and everything, and my work had me off for a number of weeks, until they were trying to figure out what their next move was, like everybody else, right? So I had like an extra 6 weeks off, and I just used that time to just put it in as a full-time job and just try to get it done. And then I put a hard deadline on myself that I was going to finish it in 2020, just because I felt like it just needed to be finished, so it might have felt like at the end that it was it might have felt like that because we had a couple snags in printing, and then we had some changes, and then a couple more snags, and then a couple more changes. But yeah, it was a 3.5-year project all in all.
Wow. And it's a kind of an unusual book. And Jamie, of course, you did a review on it. I mean, give us the Reader's Digest version, if you will, about how fascinating this book was for you to read.
Well, that's why I wanted to read it. Is I didn't know Lance's story. I didn't grow up watching World Class, and until we got the internet and the network and things like that. But it was kind of after the untimely death of David Von Erich, who was, of course, a member of the infamous Von Erich family. Fritz, the patriarch and the promoter for World Class, he had to find a replacement because they had a really hot feud going on with the fabulous Freebirds, who, of course, was Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts. Mm-hmm. So with David's death, there was just two Von Erichs, Carrie and Kevin. The thinking kind of was that Mike, the younger brother, was not quite ready yet. So David Manning, who was the booker and the referee for World Class, met William Kevin Vaughn, aka Lance Vaughn, on a golf course, and they decided to bring him in as Lance Von Erich, son of Waldo Von Erich, who we must also point out Waldo was not a blood relative either.
No, he was not. I remember Waldo. He was not a real Von Erich.
So that's kind of this, and then what Vinny has done with Lance is tell that story about, and I kind of said this in the review, like this guy was handed a golden ticket, and what, it's kind of poses the question, if you're handed this ticket, would you take it? And Lance took it.
And Vinny, how did you meet Lance?
I met him. I have this website, WrestleVille.com, and I just, when I'm not working, I love wrestling, like all of us, right? So, and I've always enjoyed writing. I used to cover boxing and MMA in the state of Texas, and we're covering all the big shows. And when that kind of came to an end, I still wanted to write, and so I just started pursuing writing about wrestlers, and I started a website, WrestleVille.com, and through that journey of just writing about wrestlers, I stumbled upon Lance and James Beard, who became a friend of mine, a referee here in Texas, got me in touch with Lance. I reached out to Lance, and Lance was very receptive. He was a little skeptical, like, what are you doing and why are you doing this and who cares? And, nobody cares. And, who's going to read it and who wants to read it? All these questions.
It's a fascinating story. I mean, he's got to realize that at that time, I mean, the Von Erichs, they were just such the legends that they were in that territory. And I mean, you could remember the stadiums being sold out and how tragic that whole family was. I mean, and then in the middle of all the chaos, I mean, here's a guy who they decide to make a Von Erich. So, I mean, what a fascinating story.
Absolutely. Well, every time that I would, years passed after he left and everything, if I'm on the internet and I saw a picture of Lance, because nobody really talked about him. You didn't know much about him after that. You'd see pictures of him, or he'd come up every once in a while. You'd see something, the fake Von Erich or Lance non-Erich or something like that. And of all the wrestlers, every time I saw something of him, it was just really a lot of curiosity for me. Like, man, what was going on with that? And I used to have a friend, as funny as I'd always ask him questions like, how do you do this? Or how do you do that? Or how do you do this? And he'd say, write a book about it. You'll figure, you'll find out what you want to know if you write a book about it. Well, that's kind of what I did in this situation. I found out a lot about this topic, and it really did fascinate me. And it was mind blowing for me to uncover and discover some things that I guess we all thought were true at one, like things, like certain events happened the way that it did, but it wasn't that.
Well, you got some of the clarifications on some of the things that actually went down. And Jamie, as a reviewer, I mean, what fascinated you most about reviewing this book and diving into it the way you did for Slam?
For me, the most interesting thing was the backlash Lance faced because he wasn't a biological Von Erich, and when he left World Class, I remember there was a quote from Jim Cornette, who always speaks his mind, of course. It was on the Von Erich episode of Dark Side of the Ring, and this really struck me, and I really wanted to read the book after this. It said, which meant bringing in Von, really hurt their image, which meaning the Von Erichs, and it started the downward spiral of World Class going a little bit quicker. They, the fans, knew he wasn't a Von Erich. They're lying to us. Of all the angles that happened in the final years of World Class, Lance Von Erich was the worst. That's what Jim Cornette said. And to me, like I even said this to Vinny when we were talking, I'm like, it's not like he killed anybody. Like to me, it just didn't make sense.
Well, I mean, I think that maybe that backlash was because of how beloved this family was. And they were like idols. They were rock stars.
The girls used to.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
And then, when that happened, and then, kind of fans smelled something fishy, and the backlash was there kind of naturally in a way. Donny Laible is still in the waiting room, and he gave us a little information about Waldo. Walter Sieber lived in Toronto after his wrestling, and he was into holistic medicine, had a practice, a cross between a physical therapist and a chiropractor. Did you get a hold of Waldo?
Waldo's no longer
I did get a picture. I did get, he's no longer with us, but I did.
Oh, he's gone. I mean, I don't know, man. I remember him working, but I don't,
But see, what's so funny about this whole thing is nobody gives Waldo a hard time for not being a Von Erich.
Right?
Yes.
No one chastised him.
And you know what's also funny is,
he passed in 2009. Thank you, Don.
and like if you go in the Facebook groups and stuff, people they'll just protest their dislike for him, and he says, well, what did he ever do to you? He goes, I just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's wrestling, people. Let's look at it for what it is, and he doesn't care. I mean, he doesn't care. And he's pretty honest in the book about his flaws and, just who he is. He makes no excuses for he is who he is.
I mean, it's got to be great, and you got to be proud of, when you see this thing and you get the copies, and now people are reviewing it, and it's getting some good reviews. People are enjoying it. So I mean, all the work that you put into it, are you happy with the way it's going? With everything that's going on with the book?
Absolutely. Of course, my expectations are high, right? I mean, and I may never meet my expectations, but for where I'm at, and when I talk to other writing friends of, oh, this is how many I sold, and this is what I'm doing, they're like, dude, you're heading tails further than where I was at that point in where I was with my first book. So yeah, I'm very proud of the book. And, I kind of say this, if you want to know about World Class at that time, this is the book, and it's not heavy on the Freebirds. He didn't talk a lot about the Freebirds, in that, but you got to remember they were kind of in and out when he was there.
Yeah. I mean, the chapters that you wrote, I mean, there's chapters on Chris Adams and Ric Flair and Gino Hernandez. I mean, it really covers that territory in a way that that's very educating for those people who want to read about that rich history of that territory and this family who was they could have been, they're almost like monarchs in a way.
Oh my gosh.
For a period of time. It's just an amazing story. But I really want to congratulate you. And any closing comments, Jamie, because I also want you to let everybody know where they can get a copy of this book. But Jamie?
Vinny, something I was wondering about is you obviously had to talk to Lance a lot. Like I think you told me you talked like every Sunday. So can you tell us, describe Lance? What is Lance the man like?
Well, he's kind of snarky.
A little bit.
he's a little snarky. He's a little sometimes. When he's. Of course, now, after talking to him for almost 4 years, I know him a little better. Our relationship is definitely grown, in that time. So we kind of know each other. Like if I get excited, he doesn't think I'm yelling at him. He just, oh, Vinny's a little excited, But at first, I could tell he was like, well, why are you yelling at me? I'm not yelling at you. I'm just trying to, we got to get him moving. We got to do this. We got to do that. But yeah, he's a little snarky. Sometimes he's, you think he's joking when he's not. And sometimes he's, other way around, But he is, I tell you this, he speaks his mind. He's a solid dude. Everybody said, everybody I talked to, he's a loyal friend. He follows through with what he says he's going to do. And, he told me in the very beginning, and I've seen this over the years, he says, look, there's no gray area with me. Either people like me or they don't. Yeah. And I don't, he's at that age in his stage in his life where, he just really doesn't care. But
right.
he enjoyed working on this project, even though he was very reluctant to doing it. Now that we are where we're at, I could tell he's happy with the book. He's glad that he did it. And, but he really wasn't, and he told me this the other day too. I asked him, hey, would you be willing to do an interview? He goes, I've been telling you for 3 years, I haven't been willing to do any interviews.
Well, that's why you're here, right? But you're selling it. You're selling it well.
And he helps me out.
Did you ever go to the Sportatorium?
I did.
You did.
I went a few times. They had their matches on Friday night, and I worked on Friday night, so it was hard for me to get there on a regular basis. But I went to like all the Reunion Arena shows and the Texas Stadium shows, but yeah, the Sportatorium was a special place where you could say
very historic. I was fortunate enough to go to a few shows there myself, and it's part of the history of this business. It really is.
Well, Vinny grew up not too far from the Von Erichs, right?
Absolutely, 10 miles.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was right in there.
Wow. Jamie, your review on this wonderful book is on slamwrestling.net, and it's readers should take a chance on Lance, which is a good start for the article. And if people want to read that review, they can go to slamwrestling.net and check it out. But for those of you who may have been enticed by this interview, here it is. And Vinny, I know we talked a while about getting you on the show, and I'm happy that you were able to do this tonight. Where can people get a copy of this book?
Right now, you can get it at lancebychance.com, and we're in process of getting it into other countries. So people in Canada and the United Kingdom, I've got several people in the United Kingdom have reached out to me, which was kind of surprising to me. And I had a couple podcasts from over there reach out to me. So there's an interest over there. And, one thing that's been kind of funny for me is like, I think I've sold more books or just as many books up like in Massachusetts and like maybe the New England area than I have in Texas, which is kind of surprising to me.
Like people could click on that from this show. Greg is always thinking, I tell you. But I mean, so it's basically a book that's a direct-to-consumer book at this point. I mean, so you're selling it as one of the authors directly to the public. And I'm sure you'll sign it for people too who order these if they like.
Absolutely, yeah. And we have signed books. We Lance, we have signed books by Lance, and then. Of course, he's in another country. He signed some labels for me. We'll stick those in the book. If you want me to sign the book, just ask me and I'll do it. But one thing I'd like to say about the book is yes, it's a book about Lance Von Erich and his career in wrestling. But when you read the book, when I was talking to David Manning, I found so much more about how professional wrestling ran back then in the territorial system and how they did the belts and the just the way they did the business, right? And I included that in the book. And in the review, Jamie, I wanted to address the fact that
let's talk about it.
Yeah, you were a little questioning the fact of why there was a chapter on Gino Hernandez.
Yeah, because Lance said he didn't know him very well. So I just thought it was odd, somebody's autobiography, to have a full chapter. But you wanted to tell us why, so.
Yeah, the reason why I chose to do it that way, I had so much information on him. And it was hard for me to kind of fit it in with Lance as far as, me and Gino did this and me and Gino did that, because he was only there for like maybe 4 months. But that incident when he passed away was so huge. Even though he was a heel, it really affected, I think, the attendance. And David Manning did too. He's the accumulation of David's death and Gino's death and Mike's death. You know, he really thought that those deaths together were a huge part of the downfall of that territory, along with other mistakes that were made in there. You know, there was not just really one thing, it was a lot of things. But I wanted to put that in there because living there, I really got to experience, because he was one of those guys everybody loved to hate, right? But boy, I tell you, that city mourned when he passed away, and it was sad. And I think it was really a wake up call for everybody in that in the Dallas-Fort Worth area when he passed away, and how he passed away. It was a shock, and it was saddening. And I just really wanted to kind of pay tribute to him. There's a lot of people that may not know Gino Hernandez, and I wanted to write a book that, you know, was world class as well. You know, if someone says, "Hey, I'm looking for a good book on world class," I wanted to be that book, you know, and that was what I was trying to strive for, you know.
I think you've captured it.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's very comprehensive on those days and those performers that were in and out of that territory, and that whole backstory on how this all happened. I mean, this was, you know, one of those things in the history of professional wrestling that people still, you know, at least the ones that are old enough now to remember back when it all happened. It's a fascinating story, and I really thank you for coming on here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
One thing I just wanted to bring up that I thought was really cool in the book, the fact that he reached out to Kevin Von Erich.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really ballsy, and the fact that he has a forward, even though Kevin doesn't say the nicest
forward
things
is interesting.
I just thought that was really cool that Vinny took the time to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, John. I just thought that was
Kevin. A word from Kevin. Yeah.
Yes.
Not.
He had all the pizzazz of a mashed potato sandwich.
Yeah, he was like a mashed potato sandwich. No pizzazz at all. Wow. And he was dead set against it. But listen, I hope everybody out there who buys this book, it's a good one for your collection. Jamie, I really appreciate it. And there it is, you know.
Mine's all written all over, so I can't.
That's why I wore the shirt today, too, you could see, you know.
Yeah, we all have color coordinated.
There you go.
Yeah, I've got mine here, too. So
there you go. So make sure you get it. It's a good read. It really is. And Jamie, we're going to be talking to you about bringing more authors on to, because you do a lot of reviews for Slam, and there's a lot of wrestling books coming out, and you know, maybe you'll review mine soon too, because that's kind of.
Well, I'm not reviewing yours. Greg said that would be a conflict of interest, but I have picked someone to review yours, so it's going to get done. Yeah, it's already in the works.
Yeah. Greg is my you know, co-writer / psychologist. And he got a lot out of me. So anyway, congratulations on the book, Vinny and Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll talk to you soon, and it's been a pleasure having you both on.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Jamie Hemmings from SlamWrestling.net and Vinny Berry. It's a good book. Check it out. I want to, you know, this has been a long show today, but I'm excited and happy that we were able to get through it. We had a great show with David Sammartino, Donny, and of course Alex with the news each and every week. I wanted to talk about a couple of things before we wrap it up today here at Pro Wrestling Spotlight Live. There are a couple of things going on right now. If you're into the history of pro wrestling, I have done a deal recently with the folks over at the Wrestling Universe. And right now, I mean, you can get some of my historic archives from back in the day, WrestlingUniverse.com. For example, there's a shot that made the cover of Wrestling Monthly, shot I shot in the dressing room at Madison Square Garden of superstar Billy Graham. Of course, the great Bruiser Brody and the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. The guy had the fan club floor, Freddie Blassie, George the Animal Steel, the Grand Wizard, the unbelievable Valiant Brothers. WrestlingUniverse.com. Just go to the menu and you'll see John Arezzi photographs. All of the pictures come with a top loader. Here's one of my favorites, by the way. This is I just love this picture, Superstar and the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. My goodness, what a good one. But each and every month, I'm going to put up 20 to 30 photos from my archives, and you get a top loader. I sign a certificate of authenticity for each picture, and you can get them at thewrestlinguniverse.com. Just go to the menu, click on John Arezzi Photographs. Also, our friends over at Forward Merch, we have a big sale going on. If you're looking for a Pro Wrestling Spotlight mask or a George 316 t-shirt, a hoodie, and those other items, you could just go now to tinyurl.com/PWS store, Forward Merch, and we have 28% off this weekend until Monday is the last day they do it. So for the next couple of days, tinyurl.com/PWS store, or just go to Forward Merch, put Matt Memories and John Arezzi in the search engine, and take 28% off with the code for Love of Music, because they got so many other things there, so many big name rock and roll artists, and they're just a fabulous company that we partner with on our merchandise. And speaking of merchandise, we have another big auction going up today. I'm going to try to get it up before midnight tonight. It'll run through Monday night. Some fabulous autographed items, some really one-of-a-kind things. I got some signed contracts for some wrestlers we did business with, vintage magazines from the 60s to 70s. And so that is on Facebook, and you go to John Arezzi's Vintage Wrestling Auctions at Facebook, and you'll be able to check it out there. And I'm really sorry. I know we had a lot of comments coming in here. There's a plug for the book, lancebychance.com. Dumb question. What is a top loader? A top loader is a nice hard plastic cover that you put the picture in, so you could that's what a top loader is. Anyway, another great show. Thank you, Stephen. Best kept secret. Yeah, tell your friends about it. I mean, I'm trying to grow the audience on this thing, and you know, we're doing our best. I enjoy it each and every week, but you know, I'm in a demographic where maybe people don't want to hear too much about the old timers, except for the people that are here. But share it. We stream on Facebook. We stream on YouTube at my YouTube channel, which is John Arezzi's Matt Memories, and let people know about it. And we're going to try to get a lot more guests coming up. But we appreciate everybody who's here with us. I know we have a hardcore following here, and they're on each and every week, and I want to thank everybody again. So that's going to about wrap it up for me. I got to get ready to tape my podcast now with the great Brian Last to talk about the mystery of George from Lindenhurst, another episode where George, someone called in as an imposter George from Lindenhurst from 1990. So anyway, that I'm taping that with Brian in really, literally just a few minutes. Until next week, when I talk more wrestling with you right here, this is John Arezzi. Have a great weekend and stay safe out there. Thank you, everybody.